You ever seen that one clip from Community, the one where Donald Glover walks in to just all hell broken loose and he's got the pizza and he's like, what's going on? That was me after I watched this show and I went into Community to see what the discourse was. Hello everyone, welcome back to Let's Talk with Tom. My name is Tom, and I want to talk about Disenchantment. Now, I waited a couple minutes to watch this because I was like, I don't know, it just wasn't a priority to me. For those of you who do not know, Disenchantment is Matt Groening's, I say it Groening instead of Groening because, I don't know, I just grew up seeing it written that way, so I was like, it's Groening, but it's actually Groening. So, just whenever you hear me say Groening, just know I'm wrong. I know I'm wrong, and sometimes that's okay. But it's Matt Groening's new show. He made Futurama, Simpsons, all these great shows, and people were really hyping up this show, it seemed like. And when it first dropped on Netflix, it took me a minute to get to it, but I saw a lot of people saying stuff, and it was a lot of people saying, yeah, it's okay, it's nothing special, which I don't think I'd necessarily disagree with that. It's not over the moon, like amazing, but I discovered through looking through the cartoon community discourse that people were expecting it to be. And I was like, what? Really? Me personally, I just saw like some of the promotion for it. I saw the previews and everything. And I was just like, okay, this will be a reasonably good show. Like, I wasn't expecting it to be the next Simpsons or the next Futurama. But I looked around to see what people's reactions were to the show, and it seemed like a lot of people were actually expecting that. A lot of people were expecting this huge thing, which, to be honest, I think is a little unrealistic. I mean, I guess it makes sense when you consider this is the guy who made The Simpsons, the guy who made Futurama, both very amazing shows, or at the very least you can say that they very strongly impacted pop culture and how we view animation, especially adult animation. But personally, I've been watching The Simpsons since I can remember. I've watched pretty much all of Futurama, and like, I've become very familiar with Matt Groening's style, his comedy, his writing, and like, this isn't disappointing to me. It's just like, okay, this is how Matt Groening usually does things. I mean, not to say that this is always the quality he makes things at, but this is kind of like his sense of humor. This is sort of his style of writing, like, it's all there, and this is about what I expected at this point in Matt Groening's career. Not to say he can never have a hit again. In fact, I think that maybe moving forward, Disenchantment could be even better than it is now, and I think people might be jumping the gun on dismissing this show, because it's honestly, I think it's worth watching, if anything, because of the fact that it has potential to get better in the future. I think that it definitely is worth watching because of that. But something I want to talk about is that, I get that this might not be Matt Groening's best work, but if you're expecting a new show to be on the level of The Simpsons, to be on the level of Futurama, to be a huge hit like that, if you're ever setting your expectations so high, even if it's like within realistic measures, as like with, oh, this guy has made great stuff in the past, so this is going to be phenomenal, you're kind of asking to be let down. I mean, the same thing kind of happened with Legend of Korra. People out there absolutely hate Legend of Korra. There are YouTube videos that are like extremely long that are just people ranting about the Legend of Korra. The Legend of Korra isn't a bad show. It might not be the best show, it might not be on par with its predecessor, The Last Airbender, but it's not a bad show. It's not perfect, it has flaws, but when you compare it to anything that isn't the masterpiece that is The Last Airbender, it holds up pretty well. Like, it's not the greatest of all time, but it's definitely decent, at the very least. And sometimes you just gotta look at stories on their own. You can't be comparing them to what came before it or what you think it should be. You just gotta look at things in a vacuum and be like, alright, do I enjoy this? Can I get joy out of watching this? And if the answer is yes, then don't hate it. Like, I don't understand the idea of putting energy into hating something that really doesn't even deserve to be hated. Especially if you're going to compare it to some of the greatest pieces of animation in history, which is the case with Legend of Korra, and I think is probably the case with Disenchantment as well, because you're comparing this to The Simpsons and Futurama, which, like, if you go up to someone on the street and ask them what their favorite animated show of all time is, they might say Futurama or The Simpsons. And if you're going to compare a new show to a show that's already on that level, then you're kind of asking to be let down. Now, from what I understand, people were expecting this to be the next Gravity Falls, the next BoJack Horseman, which again, two shows that are like up there with people saying they're the greatest of all time. Like, this isn't a realistic stage to set for a show that is, for one, something new, something that is kind of being taken a risk on. I don't know if that sentence even made sense, but this is a show that was commissioned by Netflix to be done by Matt Groening, and you can kind of tell that Matt Groening, I'm just gonna say Matt Groening because I know people are probably gonna get tired of it. Netflix commissioned the show to be made by Matt Groening, and Matt Groening made this show, and you can kind of tell, like, Matt Groening is not used to writing shows for streaming services. This show definitely feels like it's paced and written to be aired on cable television, with the fact that if you go around and you look at some of the things that people have been saying, a big criticism is the fact that they kind of establish a story that at first is kind of underwhelming, and then they kind of go off and do random things for several episodes. And then they come back, and then the show actually starts to get engaging. And then you actually start to get into the meat of everything, and you're actually engaged. And I think the only reason that this is very prominent and why this sticks out is because it's on a streaming service where you can watch every episode in succession. Whereas if this was airing on television, cable television, then it would be expected for the creator, for the studios, to make a bunch of episodes where it's just a bunch of one-off adventures that are meant to kind of build out the world. That way, when there aren't new episodes, the network can just kind of air those one-offs as reruns, because you don't need to be invested in the story. You don't have to have a whole lot of background to understand what's going on, but it still gets you acquainted with the world and the characters. But when you're on a streaming service, those types of episodes don't really make sense. And given who made this show, it's not that crazy that they would do this, because Matt Groening is used to writing for television. And writing for streaming is something that's sort of new and something that people are still kind of innovating and figuring out. So if you're used to writing for television and you basically assume, like, okay, I've been the head of all these successful TV shows, I know what I'm doing, and then you go in and then you do it the same, but it's on a new platform where that doesn't really work. It's kind of understandable of how that would happen. Is it good? Is it excusable? Not really, but it's something you gotta kind of understand. And this is the first season of the show, so it's like I don't think it's that big of a deal that they made that mistake so early on, as long as they correct it in the future. Like, if season 2 comes back, instead of wrapping up the story that they have going on, because this season kind of a cliffhanger where they got a whole lot of loose ends to tie that they're probably going to do the beginning of next season. If they do that and then they go back into one-off adventure stuff to build out the world that feels really slow and drags on and people don't enjoy, maybe at that point we can kind of start to hold that against the show. But for right now, it's like, you can criticize the show for it, but you can't be like, this is the worst show ever and this is garbage and we should cancel it because of it. Like, it's a little too early for that. Now that I've discussed all that, basically my take on one of the more general issues, I want to go into some of the more specific stuff that I see people complaining about that I don't necessarily agree with. I'm going to start with Princess Tiabini, also known as Bean, and yes, I do agree that's not the best name. Although we gotta remember, the main character of Futurama was named Fry. Is Bean really that much worse than Fry? So I've seen people come for this character for a number of reasons. Not necessarily the character itself, but like the way she is written. And one of the things I've seen people say is that it doesn't make sense as to why she is always going out, getting drunk, getting high. Like, she has no real motivation for it, and she's just doing it to have fun. I think what people are thinking is like, okay, you had Bender, who was an alcoholic, but he needed alcohol to survive, because in Futurama, robots run off alcohol. You had Homer Simpson, who was an alcoholic, but it was to deal with the fact that he was a father and a middle-class worker and all that stuff. You have Rick, who's an alcoholic, but it's to deal with all of his demons. When you look at Princess Tiabini, she's just drunk because she wants to be. And it's like, the thing about Princess Tiabini is, I'm not going to defend her character, because the thing is I've known a number of people who remind me a lot of this character throughout my life, throughout my, like, the age that I am now, my adolescence, my young adulthood. And I've known a lot of people who act like her, and that includes getting drunk and getting high for no particular reason other than to try to have fun, just because they want to. And I'm straight edge and want nothing to do with drugs or alcohol, so the fact that other people are like more upset about this than me is actually kind of surprising. This is actually pretty realistic. This is actually how people act. And also, I went out and I looked, and Princess Tiabini is 19, or at least that's what people have kind of speculated based on, like, they said that she was this age this many years ago, so she would be about 19 now. So she's about 19, 20, maybe 18, I don't know. I didn't think that deeply, but she's around that age bracket, which is around the age I am now and the age that most of my friends are. And I can very much say that, at least within my circle, from what I've seen and my experience, people who are that age definitely go out and get drunk and get high just for the sake of it. Like, it's not unrealistic, and there doesn't really need to be a motivation there, other than people want to do that, because that's realistic. And if anything, I kind of see that as more of a positive than a negative, even if I don't necessarily identify with her because of it. I see it as more of a positive than a negative because it's actually realistic to the age bracket that they're describing. Like, if Matt Groening, who is an older guy, can write a character who is my age, and I'm like, yep, I know multiple people like that, then that's pretty admirable. And I actually gotta give a hand to him for doing that. Now, next thing is a criticism that Luci, who is I actually like this character more than any other character in the show, as you can tell by the fact that I drew him. It probably would have looked better if I filled in all the way instead of just like scribbling him in. But also, I don't fully trust this whiteboard wall to erase things, so I'm like, I'm just gonna play it safe and not go super thick on there. But Luci is actually one of my favorite characters, partly because of the fact that I'm a huge Eric Andre fan. Eric Andre is like one of my favorite people in the world. I very much enjoy his comedy, his comedic delivery, especially in this show. So Luci is like one of my favorite characters, but the thing that I've seen a lot of people say this, including Retro Nemo, who is on this channel. He and many others have said that Luci is a pointless character because the purpose of Luci in this show, for those of you who do not know, is he's a demon. And basically these cloaked figures who watch through a magical fire as to what Princess Tiabini and the royal family is doing, they sent her a demon to basically motivate her to act as a delinquent. And a lot of people are saying, well, she doesn't need that because she's already a rebellious degenerate to begin with, so why does she need someone to encourage that? Well, again, I've known a lot of people like this in my life, and everyone who acts like Princess Tiabini usually has a friend who is enabling everything they do, which is exactly the role that Luci plays. Like, people just kind of looked at the way Luci was presented. Oh, I'm here to make you do bad things. And that was kind of how they brought him into the show. That was kind of the way that they introduced him, which maybe wasn't the best, but you kind of gotta look past what they said flat out and kind of look more at the execution. The execution isn't necessarily that he's trying to get Tiabini to do bad things. It's mostly that he's suggesting things for her to do. He feeds into her more rebellious side, and he kind of takes advantage of it at times. And also, something I really like about the dynamic between Luci and Bean is the fact that over time they actually start to become legitimate friends and use their relationship and use their friendship to sort of become better people. And some people were kind of confused as to like, well, Luci was sent specifically to kind of ruin Bean's life by these shrouded figures. Doesn't that mean that he has like bad intentions? Like, here's how I interpret it, is these shrouded figures who are trying to ruin Bean's life, they sent Luci not as like, here are your orders, execute them. It was more so, we have demons, and demons have a certain nature to them. So basically Luci has free will, but they trust that the way that he acts and the way demons in general act, he is going to do what they want him to do. And their plan is kind of reliant on an unknown factor, but in reality, they've actually become friends because they actually have a lot in common, because Luci's a demon and Bean is a delinquent. And ironically, they're actually kind of developing each other and they're making each other better people, which is not something that these shrouded figures planned, but it's what's happening anyways. And then there's Elfo, and Elfo is actually my least favorite character because he is incredibly annoying. And in fact, usually the worst jokes in the show come from situations involving Elfo. And he is a big part of the show, so I guess I can kind of see why some people might not like the show based on that. I mean, outside of him, I feel like everything's pretty good, and even he doesn't always suck. Now, some people are claiming that Elfo is like meant to be Bean's love interest, or that he's one day going to get Bean and whatever, because that's a trope. And I mean, honestly, I don't think so. I don't see that happening. People are like, oh, it's like Fry and Leela. well, Fry was not the best person, but Fry and Leela's relationship was kind of more like Star-Lord and Gamora, where it's like, yeah, they could be together, but also the dude is really immature and needs to develop first before he can even be deserving of the girl, and they wrote it that way. And with this, it seems more like Bean just isn't into this dude, and she just wants to be friends with him, but homie is trying as hard as he can to change that. And I don't think that's gonna change. But also, I don't know. I mean, I've watched Stranger Things, and I was like, there's no way they're gonna put John and Nancy together. Like, John already took pictures of her and Steve doing it without their consent, and was being a total creep. And also, the two of them just have no on-screen chemistry. I have no idea how the actors are dating in real life. Maybe it's different on screen. I don't know them personally, so maybe. But on screen, the characters just have no chemistry, and they just really, really made that happen. Despite the fact that I was like, damn, if this happens, it's gonna be weird and make no sense. And that happened, it was weird and made no sense. So, I mean, I don't know. People love to see people get together in shows, or at least that's what the people who write shows think, I guess. So, it might happen. But if it does, it'll probably suck, but I don't know, whatever. Maybe Elfo won't even be in the future seasons. I mean, the way season 1 ended off, maybe, but also it kind of left him with some loose ends to tie, so pretty much confirms that he's probably going to come back. I don't know. Overall, Disenchantment ain't a bad show. It's pretty entertaining. I would say it's like, if you take like the most okay episodes of Futurama, that's about the average, I would say, for this show. That's the average quality, I would say. So it's not bad. It's not amazing. It's not incredible. If you're expecting a masterpiece, then maybe wait a minute to see where it goes. But other than that, like, I mean, it's enjoyable enough. I enjoyed it. I don't regret watching it. I don't feel like I wasted my time watching it. And also, it's 10 half-hour episodes. So if you want to check it out. I would say that's definitely at least worth giving a chance, and if you don't like it, you only wasted 5 hours of your life. I'm just rambling at this point, so thank you for watching Let's Talk with Tom on the Roundtable, but Tom isn't just on the Roundtable. I have my own self-titled personal channel, I have a Twitter, I have an Instagram, I have a Snapchat, I have all that good stuff. In fact, I even have a Tumblr. So, if you're interested in any of that, check that out, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye!